Hello everyone, and welcome to the 6th progress update video for the Fantabuloso game. It's certainly been a long time since the last one, hasn't it? A couple of people have asked me if the game's dead now, and I'm sorry about giving anybody that impression. The good news is, almost entirely the opposite is true. The primary reason for not having made Progress Update 6 until now is simply that I wanted to devote my spare time to developing the game, as opposed to recording frequent progress updates. Now, this means that there's been a massive amount of content added since the last PU, and I won't be able to recount every single thing I've added in the past 5 or so months here. However, what I can do is give you guys a rough overview of all the cool new mechanics and features I've added since the last video, so that's exactly what I'm going to do today. Specifically, I'm going to take you through the brand new tutorial in Cragwell Woods, which shows off a lot of the new features with the help of the friendly crag-built signs. After that's done, I'll show a couple of other major additions, and then talk about what's going on with the game in the near future, especially in regards to the demo. So, let's start off at the beginning. When the introductory cutscenes are done playing, Catboy will end up in this spot, and he has the choice to either do or skip the tutorial. One important thing to note is that the tutorial doesn't give Catboy any sort of reward. It exists solely to give him an introduction to the platforming mechanics of the game. This lets people who are replaying the game skip it without any sort of penalty, and also helps make things smoother for anybody who might end up speedrunning it. Now, you'll have noticed by now that there's a proper dialogue system in place. This will coexist with the mini dialogue system I introduced back in Progress Update 3. Currently, it's not quite feature complete. I still need to add animations for the 3D models, sound effects for the text, different moods for the talking heads, and dialogue-based camera positioning. However, the core functionality is here, and the features that still need adding should be fairly easy to implement overall. Also, as this sign said, you can hold down the interact button to speed up dialogue, or the pause button to skip through it super quickly. This, once again, just helps people who are replaying the game or trying to speedrun it, since no one likes waiting for dialogue. It's stupid. It's not fun. Like, come on. This next technique is actually going to be very familiar to anybody who watched the old Progress Update videos. The air kick was actually one of the first platforming maneuvers I added to the Fantabuloso game. I think jumping was the only one that came before it. And even though it hasn't changed very much since its inception, I still figured, it should be in the tutorial. It's important to know if you want to get that extra distance and height. Another major change, though mostly internal, concerns the ledge hanging mechanic. Originally, I had to manually place colliders at every ledge I wanted Catboy to be able to hang on, which would have been an absolute nightmare for large scenes with many curved edges, because every single flat bit of it would need its own collider. Now, however, it's completely dynamic. Catboy just is able to detect when a ledge is grabbable, and he grabs onto it. This means that map creation is going to take a substantially smaller amount of time, which is amazing. Now we reach the first majorly new platforming mechanic, the lanky lunge. Similar to the long jump found in many other 3D platformers, Catboy can launch forwards by crouching and jumping while moving. Also, yeah, by the way, Catboy can crouch now. That's another new thing. However, unlike most long jumps, where crossing massive gaps is the main function, the lanky lunge was also designed specifically with the idea of just going fast in mind. Catboy can turn slightly upon landing from a lunge, and he can actually build up a very strong amount of momentum by chaining lanky lunges together. This makes it just a neat little, speedrunning tactic, and just in general it helps you move fast and it's fun to do. However, you can't have a long jump without a high jump, right? This sign over here teaches Catboy the Lofty Leap ability, which lets him jump very high by crouching and jumping while stationary. Once again, this is fairly standard 3D platformer fare, but there's no reason to fix what isn't broken, right? However, I am considering letting the Lofty Leap be charged up, letting Catboy jump higher at the cost of needing to stay still for longer, risking being attacked. This will likely end up being an unlockable upgrade as opposed to a baseline skill, if it actually makes it into the game. We'll have to see. So here's where we reach one of the most unique platforming additions of the Fantabuloso game. The swimming. In many 3D platformers, swimming has been one of the most hated portions. It's generally finicky, slow, and disorienting, and more often than not comes with a stressful time limit on top of that for drowning. Well, Catboy doesn't have to deal with any of that. First and foremost, there's not an oxygen meter of any sort, meaning that Catboy can stay underwater indefinitely. Further, he has very clear controls that don't involve button mashing. Holding jump moves him up, while holding crouch moves him down. Beyond that, he simply moves on a plane parallel to the camera's forward direction. If that doesn't make sense, the game Guild Wars 2 has a very similar swimming style, so you can take a look at that. And finally, Catboy moves very, very fast when underwater, letting the player easily and freely navigate whatever body of water they've ended up in. To top things off, Catboy can accelerate even faster by holding down attack, letting him launch out of the water at breakneck speeds and reach heights he actually couldn't make it to otherwise. Now, I'm sure that the changes I've made to the standard platformer swimming formula aren't perfect. I've already encountered a multitude of bugs, which, as anyone who follows my blog should know, I've had to spend a decent amount of time ironing out. Hopefully once the demo comes out, you guys can help me solve even more of them. The last major platforming technique that's been added is one known to just about any platforming veteran: the jump wall. Named by the signs, this technique is really just wall jumping. There's not a whole lot that's special about it, but one thing that's important to note is that Catboy doesn't cling to walls. This means that jump walling is a faster-paced, skill-intensive ability as opposed to the free mobility the way it is in most games. It also helps reduce incidences of what I call magnetic walls, where your character clings onto a wall when you actually don't want to be on it. I'm sure we've all encountered situations like that in games, and personally, it's one of my biggest pet peeves in platformers, so I really didn't want any chance of that happening in the Fantabuloso game. So, that's it for the tutorial. You're probably wondering where all the combat is in the tutorial, but don't worry. As this sign says, there's going to be a secondary tutorial that teaches the combat mechanics shortly after Catboy meets Fear Friend Yellow. I'll talk about that some more in Progress Update 7, along with all the changes I've made to the combat system in the past months, because, full disclosure, the combat tutorial hasn't even been started yet. Moving on to the more miscellaneous information, however, saving and loading has been implemented. In addition to this, a complete framework for collectibles has been implemented as well. I'm happy to say that I can show this off in practice. You can see the primary collectible of the game, the golden sausage, in front of Catboy here. This is what sausages are going to look like now. Catboy can collect them to gain sausage points, which he can then use to level up in the skill tree. We'll save that for the combat update though, it fits better there. Blood sausages will be rarer, but they will provide Catboy with 5 SP as opposed to 1. They'll be granted for major accomplishments, such as beating the level's boss, or collecting all of a level's mini collectibles. Now, normally this is where I'd say you have to take my word on it that this works. Good news is, though, you don't. Let's head back into the pause menu. You can see here that I'm currently at 0 golden sausages collected for this map. However, when I pick up this golden sausage in front of me, you can not only see the SP in the bottom right increase, but the counter here in the pause menu goes up as well. Same goes for the mini collectibles and the blood sausages, but I won't spend time showing those off. This video is already getting a little too long as it is. One new feature in the pause menu is that set of 5 sphere dog silhouettes you see at the bottom right. I've mentioned it on the blog, but every level will have 5 unique sphere dogs to rescue. Once all 5 are saved, Catboy will be rewarded with a blood sausage, and the dogs will be sent to a dog zoo where Catboy can visit them. These silhouettes here track the sphere dogs collected so far, though currently they're still a work in progress. Check the blog if you want to see pictures of them. This small stat summary is all well and good, but what if you want to see things in more detail? Well, I've now implemented the record screen. In this screen you can see your goodies, your miscellaneous stats, and your bestiary. We'll save the bestiary for next time, but let's talk about the first 2. In the goodies window, you can see a description of the collectibles you've gathered, both throughout the game as a whole and on a level-by-level basis. You can also see whether or not you've beaten the level's boss, and you can see your exact completion percentage down in the bottom right. It's not out of the question that ability unlocks will be added to this screen as well. We'll see. Moving on to the general stats window, this is where you can see a bunch of nifty miscellaneous stats. Currently, these 5 are the only tracked ones, but I'm most likely going to add more by the time the game releases. Your damage taken and dealt, your enemy kills, and your deaths are all pretty self-explanatory, but you might be wondering what the Nemesis stat is. Essentially, the Nemesis is the enemy that's been the biggest pain in the ass for you throughout the entire game. It starts off as old age, but becomes the enemy you've taken the most damage from, scaled relative to your health bar. This scaling keeps late-game enemies that may technically deal more damage from completely shutting out early-game enemies who might be more deadly to a given player, despite dealing less raw damage. I can demonstrate this mechanic in action next time. So that just about does it for this progress update. If you feel like that all is a bit light for 5 months of work, don't worry, you're completely right. A very, very significant portion of time was spent building and implementing the skill tree. However, I feel like that fits better alongside the combat changes, so I'll be discussing it next month. If you want to cheat and learn about it before then, head on down to the description and click the link there to check out the midweek updates I do every week on the development blog. Head back a couple months and you'll be able to find it there. Finally, in regards to the Kickstarter, I mentioned last time that I was hoping to get a Kickstarter out by September. Obviously, that didn't happen. The reason for this is that I wasn't originally planning on adding, well, pretty much everything I've added since then. At the time, all I thought I had left was the map design, which, had my assumption been correct, would have only taken about a month or two, putting me right on schedule. As a result, the demo and the crowdfunding were obviously pushed back quite a bit. Right now, I'm hoping to get the demo out by late February or March at the latest, but we'll see how intensive this semester ends up being for me. I'd also like to mention that I'm reconsidering the Kickstarter plan. The alternative I've been thinking of is to instead put the game onto early access and essentially slowly release it level by level, letting people pre-order it if they're interested. Unlike most early access games, proper bug testing would be done before each major update, and for the most part it would actually be just early access to a solid product. Let me know what you think of this plan in the comments, because I'm still very open to alternatives. Thanks for watching, everyone. Once again, my apologies on how long this took. I'm hoping to get into a once-a-month schedule with these videos again, but if you want to be sure to stay updated with the game, click the link on screen to head to the development blog, where I post weekly mini updates on the game's progress. You can also subscribe to me here to be sure to know when Progress Update 7 comes out, or you can follow me on Twitter to keep up with the streams and the other nonsense I might talk about that's not even related to the game. Tune in next time for the combat changes, skill tree, and more. And be sure to stay fantabulous. See you guys next time.